It's time to plant some onions. So I'm going back here to my freezer, and I keep vacuum sealed seed in this container, and I kind of preset this up because I had to dig it out, but I'll pick that lid up in a second. But you can see here, these are candy onions that I vacuum sealed and put in here in September of 2016. So it's 24 now. So that was yes, 8 years ago. So I wanted to show you this, that I'm using 8-year-old onion seed that normally will last a year or two. So I like to mass plant a lot of what I do, because mass planting allows me to germinate a lot of plants in a small footprint. For example, this dome here, we're going to do one of these with a dome for 200 of these onions. And when they get to a certain point, we'll pluck those out and put them in either individual cells or maybe a few in like a 2-inch by 2-inch cell, something like that, to prepare for spring when we plug them into the raised beds. But for now, I'm going to plant them all in one of these. That way I can control the growth in a minimum amount of space until they reach a certain age, because onions take a while to get size on them. Let me show you the setup here. I've got for a medium here, that's cocoa coir primarily. There may be a touch of perlite in it and maybe a small tad bit of aged rice hulls. I'm not sure because I made this mix a while back. So anyway, that's what we're going to use for the mix of the onion. Underneath here, what I have is a 10 by 10, I call it a reservoir tray. It's just a basic half 10-20. Your standard garden tray. This is a 10-10, and on top of it I've got this tray here, which is a shallower one. That way I can fill this bottom reservoir with very mild nutrient water, and I can set the trays here, and then they will not be soaking in water, because see, they have these little spots here, and if I set it directly in the water would soak through and oversaturate the plants. So what I'm doing is I'm taking a wick. Now this wick is what's called wicking rope, and all it is just cotton, has a cotton center and a polyester outside, and all I'm going to do is put it through here before I put the media in it and into the bottom of the tray here, and what that'll do is it'll pull water up through a wicking action into this little tray here. It's very simple, it's not hard to do, and the concept is called wicking. So what that'll do is it'll keep everything moist in here, and if it gets a little too moist, because the dome's going to be on top of it, I'll just open the dome some, or I can empty the reservoir where there's no wicking action happening. So once I feel like I'm going to do tomatoes, probably in all 3 of these. Actually, I'm doing peppers next. I'll probably do peppers and 1 or maybe 2, I haven't decided yet. And then I'm going to do a whole nother setup just like this, maybe 2 or 3 more just like this for tomatoes, because I grow a lot of tomatoes. Most plants, you can grow a ton of them in a very small space. It's called mass planting, and just let them grow and then pluck them and set them into cells, and they have no problem with that transplant process. All right, let's get a bit of this wicking rope here, and let me find the end here and get what I think will be enough to go. I want it to cover the bottom of the tray here and go down, so I think probably double that. About right here is more than enough. I'm going to cut it. I've got this little torch here. It says you can burn the end of this to make it more pointy, and that's so I can drive it through the various holes. Let me take this off here. I know nylon 550 cord works really well. All right, looks like it's going to work. And I just pulled it. My what you call it, lights turned off. Let me turn them back on real quick for the supplemental lighting. Here we go. All right, doing all this in time here. I've not done it completely like this before, but I've done a lot of concept like this many times before, so I know it's going to work. So I'm going to route it through here first, and then I'm going to route it into the tray. And the holes in this tray are quite a bit smaller, so this may take some finagling. I'm going to have to burn this and make a more of a point on this. I'll come back in just a sec. Alright, I used to use this for microgreens. I've gone to Amazon trays now, so I don't see the need to preserve this any longer, so why not just make it easy? So what I did is I took these snips here and I cut out an area on both sides here. That way I can put one here. It'll go down through this hole, just like that, if you want to call it a hole. And then the other one on the other side will go down. It'll actually be coming out of this one and down in the same hole, and then the other two on the other side. So that's how I ended up resolving that. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take this back out and I'm going to move this aside. I'm going to use the reservoir tray as a capture tray because I'm going to add the media now, and press it down. Now this media is very slightly moist, and what I want to do is get it really thoroughly wet and let it drain through and drip dry. So that's good right now. I'll add the onion, I'll show you in a second, and then we'll top off. So right now what I'm going to do is water it in. What I'm going to use to water it in is just, this was a little raspberry lemonade, yeah, and I like the big wide top, so I punched some holes in it. And what I'm using here is a mixture called Nature's Source. It's just a natural plant fertilizer, very weak. What's the percentages? It looks like it's 10-4-3, and I used it at half strength, so just going to take and soak this down really well. And once it goes all the way through, what will happen is this wick will get wet. And the wick needs to be saturated down into the reservoir below to start the wicking process, but that happens pretty easily once you water it down. All right, so I've got 2 of these. I'm going to open one at a time here. It hasn't been opened since it was sealed in 2016. This is 8-year-old seed, and if you know anything about onion seed, they don't last past a year hardly at all. So the preserving method of not dehydrating, what's the word I'm looking for? Sucking it down until I can remember the word, and putting it in the freezer will preserve it for a really long time. That's how seed banks do it. So I'm going to take and I'm going to spread these out. Doesn't have to be perfect. And I roughly counted these because I knew I was going to be using them year after year. And so that's what I did there. And now we'll do the other packet. I put them in my hand and just do what I'm showing you, because that gets pretty good coverage that way. These onion seeds are dark and it's really hard to see them, but it doesn't, like I said, I think I said, it doesn't have to be perfect. Alright, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take and ever so lightly cover these. That doesn't have to be perfect. And I'm going to slightly tamp it so it makes contact with the seed. Then we're going to water it in really good. I think I have a little bit of OCD or something. I like things neat to the edges, level, and all that kind of stuff. I like things squared and not cluttered. So there's no real worry about overwatering this because gravity's going to drip it down. We want to make sure and get good coverage here. I've got most of that little container. Let me look here. See if I can feel the wick. Yeah, the wick is really wet. And it's coming through, which is good. So now, let me take and put this one through the little hole. And that'll actually help, the wick will actually help pull moisture out of the media until it reaches a certain level of moisture. Alright, we're going to put the dome on it, and we're going to close the dome off first. And I'm going to put these as just placeholders for the next stuff. And I'm going to put it up on a heat mat. And that's me planting onion seeds. That easy. Mass planting. Now the most important part of this process, after probably the seed, being able to use it for so long, is getting it to germinate. And that's the most important part of germination, is a heat mat. And so I've got 3 individual heat mats here. They're controlled by one timer, and the heat it's set, it's reading, the thermostat here is reading 77 in this fig. And if it's 77 in this amount of soil here, it'll be very good for the other 2 heat mats. Now I've got a power strip coming off of the controller here, and I can control several different, well, 1, 2, 3, and there's 6 different heat mats if I wanted to. But I've got 3 going right now. I've got figs here. I've got some tomato starts for the second run during the winter, and then I've got the onions here. Now, a good way to ensure controlled temperature is to heat a body of water. So I've added, let me put this over here, water into the reservoir here, and that will, this heat mat will heat up that water, and that water will radiate heat up through here, and the wick should keep it really moist. It'll probably make it too moist, so I'll end up pulling the wick back out and setting it in the tray until I need it for later use. But for now, I'm going to leave it here, and I'm going to make sure that this is closed off. Now what I want to see is, I want to see this get nice and have moisture like in this fig tote. So I want to see some moisture in there, so I know the humidity is way up, so that I know the mix will remain moist enough to germinate those onion seeds nicely. I wanted to show you too, the heat mats are off right now, but I wanted to show you that it is 63.2 degrees in here. I've got another one here that says it's a little lower, so I know it's somewhere in the low 60s, and that is not ideal to germinate most things. Most things you need to be around 80 degrees or so, at least the upper 70s. And so a heat mat is definitely needed this time of year. 63 is actually pretty dang warm. Even though there's no sun coming through here, the lights help warm it, and just the radiating light, even though there's no sun, helps keep it warmer in here. But there are times where, I mean, we're getting into the 30s and below freezing during the nighttime now, and so it is critical critical that seedlings are started on a heat mat. Onions are popping pretty good, so I took the little dome off there and I put the wick down so it'll continue to get plenty of moisture. And it looks like I got decent germination. I mean, there were roughly 200 there, so we'll have to wait and see what happens over the next few days with the germination. We've got really good germination. I'm kind of shocked after 8 years, but it's still, freezing does a great job. So that's what it looks like, and if you look closely, there are still some that are coming up. So I'm not sure we're going to get, you know, full 200, but, you know, if I can get 100 to 150, that'd be great. And I'm just going to plug these onions all around the raised beds around the other plants and enjoy me some fat bulbs hopefully by midsummer.